Yep. Our presentation is titled Employee Manager Relationships and Unethical Data Collection, Causes and Solutions. The presentation will explore data mining and its ethical implications. We will also cover some problems and solutions in regard to employee manager relationships and unethical data collection from an organizational behavior perspective. Finally, we will explore causes, biases, and the next steps for moving forward. So what exactly is data mining? The word itself is rather misleading. The term refers more to what is actually done with the data rather than the data collection itself. The Oxford Dictionary defines the term as the practice of analyzing large databases in order to generate new information. But data mining is so much more complex than that. While data mining has the opportunity to help many people, its uses have traditionally been more nefarious, ranging from social media algorithms geared to manipulate users to cyber criminal activity.
Cambridge Analytica was a British consulting firm run by CEO Alexander Nix. The company garnered attention in 2018 for the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Cambridge Analytica was able to acquire personal data from nearly 90 million Facebook users by promoting an app called This Is Your Digital Life. The app was used to build psychological profiles of the users by asking a series of personal questions. The information was then stored for future use by Cambridge Analytica. This app also gave Facebook personal access to the information on users' friends' networks. If someone was using this third-party app, their data, along with the data of all their Facebook friends, was up for grabs in the eyes of Cambridge Analytica. Most of these users had not given Cambridge Analytica express permission to use their data. The data was also used in the 2016 presidential election to attempt to influence voters. The goal for Cambridge Analytica was to target users who were seen as persuadable. If the company believed specific users could be swayed to vote for a certain candidate, the users would receive targeted ads on Facebook that matched their psychological profile and subtly manipulated them. This use of data fell way outside the norms of what people consider ethical and has been characterized as a threat to democracy. One of the employees involved in this data scandal was Brittany Kaiser. She's a former director of business development for Cambridge Analytica, who rose to prominence after openly speaking out against her former employers, namely the Cambridge Analytica CEO, Alexander Nix. Kaiser was formerly a staunch Democrat who worked for the Obama campaign, but her opinions started to shift after accepting a job from Nix in December 2014. The dynamic with Nix was something she had never experienced, and her new boss's influence caused her to act in ways that she wouldn't have before. This was all because she wanted to understand her new colleagues and fit into her workplace. It's important to note how much the manager-employee dynamic forms the company, the work, and in this case, the general population. Evidently, the impact that a manager has on their employees is significant. In this case, an employee trusted her boss so much that she was willing to break the law and commit a number of unethical acts just because he asked her to. It took her over 4 years to break out of that dynamic and realize the severity of the situation. When asked if she was ever uncomfortable with the unethical acts of data mining, she simply said yes, but she chose to stay anyways. This was in part because of her close relationship with Nix. She regarded him as a friend and a mentor. Nix's heavy influence and powerful position seemingly made Kaiser blind to the true severity of Cambridge Analytica's unethical behavior.
The relationship between a manager and employee has the ability to make or break the company. When the manager knowingly engages in unethical activity, their employees then must decide if they want to support this behavior, quit, or report the unethical decisions. For those who choose to stay and support their managers, there is a question of why. There are several factors that lead into an employee to choose whether or not they want to support their managers, but much of this decision can simply depend on how inherently moral the employee is. A larger question needs to be asked about the morality of the employees prior to working with an unethical manager. We cannot necessarily place sole blame on managers and employers when unethical acts are committed because the employees are often heavily involved as well. Of course, some employees might engage in these acts because they're afraid of losing their job, steady income, and comfortable life. However, many employees are fully aware of the wrongdoing of their managers and choose to support them anyways because they simply do not care. In the case of Cambridge Analytica, many of the employees chose to support their managers because they genuinely did not care that the company was behaving unethically. Several of the employees were fully aware of what was going on and fully supported it because they believed these unethical acts would serve the greater good. This is in part because of the strong employee/manager relationships within the company. Managers treated their employees like friends and essentially used kindness to gain their trust. As a result, Cambridge Analytica employees had so much trust in the company that they gladly went along with whatever their managers asked of them. 90 million Americans had their data stolen, harvested, and used against them on Facebook, and much of it could be attributed to employees who blindly followed orders and engaged in these unethical acts.
So what problems and opportunities exist from an organizational behavior standpoint as it relates to unethical business practices relative to data mining? I will start with problems, of which there are a number, and then move on and talk about some opportunities that we can see for the industry. Saur and Kuntia conducted research on what influences potentially unethical behavior relative to technology. They found that technology can lead to feeling alienated from others, which often leads to behavior that violates established social norms. The distance felt by executives to the customer makes it easier to build products which negatively impact the customer. The distance that employees feel from their managers can create a culture where employees don't notice issues or do not feel safe voicing concerns. These two taken together lead to violations of privacy norms and data collection techniques, as those working on the products feel no connection at all to those data who's collected, as well as the impact of how the data is used. The second major issue that stood out to us is this thing called role bias. Essentially, you tend to do your assigned tasks and blame those above or below for any ethical concerns that might be raised. Role bias may be a major contributor to differences in perceptions between business executives and others regarding social corporate responsibility, according to Roberts and Wasilensky. In other words, it's an attitude of, not my problem, I'm just following the leaders. They created this unethical practice. This informs us about organizational behaviors on both the employee and manager side, where neither is willing to take responsibility and the status quo is kept together. Perhaps more concerningly, research conducted by the source at the bottom of the slide found that employees tend not to notice unethical behavior, and if they do, they tend to be willing to follow along. The manager-employee relationship is more about satisfying those above them than being morally responsible. As Elena mentioned earlier, this is one of the reasons that Kaiser stayed with Cambridge Analytica for so long, as well as participated in creating products that made her uncomfortable. She had not noticed the illegal nature of her work, and though it made her uncomfortable, she was willing to follow along to the nature of the relationship between her and her boss. One opportunity that exists is the attitudes of those entering the workforce. Executives have argued that student and new employee attitudes toward unethical organizational products, goals, behavior, and culture will decline over time as they gain experience in the real world. The opportunity here is to place younger folks with more ethical concerns into management positions right off the bat, in an effort to change the manager-employee relationship relative to unethical corporate practice. There's also an opportunity to make a culture where concerns can be raised by employees without fear of losing their jobs. This requires that management be approachable, open to feedback, and ethically minded.
There are many causes of alienation and role bias that play into unethical data collection, but three main causes caught our eye. The first problem we saw is being obedient to the person in charge or your boss. Let's say your boss asks you to do something that seems unethical in your eyes. You would have to ask yourself and think about the consequences of completing or not completing the task. If you do not do the task, you most likely will lose your job or have serious consequences. If you do the task, you will have a feeling of guilt. Many companies will choose profits over ethics, and the employees in that business have no say and have to obey the rules. Saar and Kantia argued that the most important personal values in a private sector company were product quality, obedience to organizational rules, whereas development of the community surrounding the industry, tolerance for diversity, and service to the general public were less important. Another cause of the problem is the employee-manager relationship. Authentic leadership is often characterized as a good thing that will make employees feel better about their work and are more productive. Authentic leadership is the idea that leaders do not fake their leadership, do not lead for status or personal reward, and are original in their style, and whose actions seem based on values as convictions. This clearly describes Brittany Kaiser's boss at Cambridge Analytica. She mentioned how she delved into company culture, which included the values that its managers stood for, and so her boss's actions certainly seem based on said values and convictions. He also was not faking his leadership. He was original with his employees are my friends mentality, and whether he led for personal reward is up in the air, but he can certainly be characterized as an authentic leader. This authentic leadership toward a dark path, along with other factors like not noticing the unethical actions of management or the immorality of the products created, is probably the largest cause of this issue. If authentic leadership qualities are not present in a leader, things could go wrong. Bosses could demoralize their employees by not showing empathy or support, which overall hurts the performance of the company. However, just like the Cambridge Analytica case, authentic leadership can make employees blind to the unethical behavior that's going on under the mask. Another problem is the longer you do the unethical task, the more common it will feel. If an employee had doubts the first time they did the task, they would have the feeling of wrongdoing. After that, the task will seem normal to them, and they will assume that this is normal in the business world. While being in the field for your whole career, the employee then may replicate their behavior into future employees, creating a snowball effect.
As far as solutions, many companies have attempted to address these issues by providing ethics training. However, an article published by the University of Notre Dame suggests that said trainings are largely ineffective. The main drawback of these trainings is the fact that they merely train employees to repeat back ethical rules rather than thinking for themselves and learning to apply ethical principles to real-life scenarios. We decided to categorize our solutions on two different levels: solutions within companies and solutions within the industry. Within companies, we agreed that it is important that employers are clear on what information is being collected and how. This ties directly into the idea of authentic leadership as well, since leaders of companies have a responsibility to be ethical with information, especially sensitive data. In addition, there should be product transparency with the employees, which will promote trust within the organization. With regards to solutions within the industry, it is important to realize that many of these issues surrounding data mining are relatively new. As a result, laws and regulations have not necessarily caught up to some of these issues, most notably within social media companies. Our solution is to create widespread standards for ethical behavior with incentives and penalties. From an organizational behavior perspective, these rules would hold employers accountable and boost morale of employees and customers by increasing trust in organizational relationships. These standards can be maintained with checks and balances, such as semi-annual reviews for employees regarding the quality of work and ethics within the organization. Furthermore, upper management could address why the employees' tasks are relevant to the organization, or they could grant autonomy so those employees are able to choose tasks that align with their goals and ethics. This, in turn, would promote more engagement, ethical satisfaction, and excellence in their work.
Some steps we could take as an organization is to promote change and create a positive work environment. There's a problem with employees feeling distant from their customers and putting the company's agendas over their service for their customers. If the employees aren't satisfied and the work creates distance from themselves to the customers, employees become unhappy, unengaged, and could even seek opportunity to work for another firm. Relating back to Brittany Kaiser, she spoke out about her time at Cambridge Analytica. She didn't feel as if her duties in the job related to her ethics. This makes us wonder if Cambridge Analytica employees were informed about how their program was going to be utilized. Were they comfortable that their program was used to mine and target individual users to sway political votes? There's more opportunity for employee engagement and satisfaction based on ethical work practices. Workers should be more informed in what they're doing so they can individually decide if the work aligns with their morals. We can even stray away from the stereotype or rhetoric that tech industries shouldn't be trusted with private information. If workers are informed, the general public should be informed and know how the data is being monitored, utilized, and disposed of. An organization can combat the rhetoric and promote consumers' trust in the tech industry, in return, boosting company goals. There's an imbalance regarding the employee to manager relationship dynamic. Ignoring this imbalance leads to employees blindly following the orders from upper management. We need to close the power dynamic between employees and managers. Employees could get too comfortable with management and be biased to following requests that the individual isn't comfortable with. There's an unspoken rhetoric that employees need to follow orders immediately given by upper management, or else they could lose their jobs for being defiant. Solutions to combat these traditional tactics would be to have more transparency regarding the employees' tasks. Managers could bolster employees' feelings towards their work if they explain how their tasks directly affect the organization. Invoking more trust, employees will walk away with higher job satisfaction. Upper management can provide a list of options for employees to pick from and work on for the duration of their assignment. Management should inform how their assignments directly help the company so there's transparency. With employees' personal identity aligning with their company's identity, the relationship between work will be strengthened. Other methods of promoting trust and management for employees would be to implement an anonymous check-in survey so managers are aware about how their employees feel regarding their workspace and tasks. If employees have disagreements or concerns with organizational practices, there should be access to report concerns. As employees, we need to trust in the leaders of the company. If the option to bring up concerns face-to-face isn't available, there can be an anonymous tip line that upper management can read. These concerns can be mentioned without the employee losing face and the fear of losing their job. This can be quarterly to fit in with the fiscal year, and managers can provide a meeting addressing those concerns.
To summarize the presentation, the problem of alienation between executives and customers, as well as employees and managers, combined with role bias and imbalance to the employee management relationship, are major driving factors behind why companies may collect and use data unethically. From a solution standpoint, there are changes that can be made within companies, such as being clear with customers on what data is collected and how it is used, creating ways for employees to raise concerns anonymously, and creating space to discuss those concerns. Thanks for listening to our presentation.